It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
To think that someone's life can be cut short, their story unfinished, and their case left unsolved.
It really is.
And the statistics they're really startling. A significant number of murders, especially those involving vulnerable individuals, remain mysteries, even with all the advancements in forensic science. And today we're diving deep into one such case that's been weighing heavily on our minds. The 1992 murder of Eden Young in Minnesota. You shared a podcast episode about her story.
Right.
And it's one that really resonated with us.
It's a case that underscores the enduring power of hope, the complexities of memory and human perception, and the relentless pursuit of justice, even when decades have passed.
Yeah, all right. Let's unpack this together. So let's take a trip back to 1992, to the seemingly peaceful suburbs of Minnesota.
Okay.
Imagine a place where folks feel safe, where violent crime feels like a distant possibility. And that's where we meet Eden Young, a 31-year-old woman who had recently moved to the state from Philadelphia with her boyfriend, Ricky Williams.
It's crucial to understand the complexities of Eden's life. She was working as a sex worker.
Right?
And while Ricky presented himself as her boyfriend, there are hints that their relationship was far from simple. There's evidence suggesting potential abuse, control, and even financial exploitation within their dynamic.
Wow.
This immediately raises questions about power, vulnerability, and the challenges investigators face when navigating such sensitive circumstances.
So imagine this. It's the morning of September 28th,
Okay.
and a paper boy, just starting his route, comes across a pile of women's clothing, discarded on the side of a quiet suburban road. At first glance, he just assumes they're lost items, but as he gets closer, a chilling detail emerges. Blood stains on one of the garments. This gut-wrenching discovery triggers a wave of concern, leading to a missing person report filed by Ricky.
Right.
He tells the police a story about Eden getting into a mysterious blue van earlier that morning.
The blue van emerges as a recurring element in this case, almost a symbol of the unknown. A hazy memory that's difficult to grasp fully. What's particularly interesting is the level of detail Ricky provides about the van and its driver. Was this genuine observation fueled by concern? Or was it a carefully constructed narrative to deflect suspicion? It's a question that investigators grappled with from the very beginning.
And then just a day later, a tragedy unfolds. Eden's body is found in a wooded area, a mere 5 miles from where her belongings were discovered.
Wow.
Imagine the shock, the horror of stumbling upon such a scene. A resident walking his dog makes the grim discovery,
Oh.
forever changing a peaceful morning stroll into a nightmare.
The location of the body itself speaks volumes. The fact that it was found relatively close to the discarded clothing suggests an attempt at concealment, perhaps a hurried attempt to hide evidence. The proximity to the road also hints at a possible familiarity with the area on the part of the perpetrator.
The initial investigation understandably honed in on the inconsistencies in Ricky's story. He changed his alibi multiple times, which naturally raised red flags.
Right.
And then there were 2 other individuals who emerged as persons of interest. David, an acquaintance of Ricky's who had ties to Washington County and failed a polygraph test, and Brian, a married client of Eden's who, thankfully, was able to provide a verifiable alibi.
But here's where it gets really intriguing. It seems that the initial investigation, while thorough for its time, might have overlooked a crucial element, a potential link to drug trafficking. It's mentioned in one of the reports, but for some reason, the lead wasn't fully pursued. This oversight could significantly alter the course of the investigation, highlighting how biases, limitations, and the prevailing investigative techniques of the time can impact cold cases.
Now fast forward 11 years to 2008. A prison inmate comes forward, confessing to Eden's murder.
Wow.
This brings up the fascinating and often perplexing phenomenon of false confessions, something you see quite frequently in high-profile cases. What could possibly motivate someone to confess to a crime they didn't commit?
The psychology of false confessions is a complex and multifaceted beast. Sometimes it's a twisted desire for notoriety, a warped sense of guilt that compels them to take responsibility, or even a calculated manipulation tactic to gain something within the prison system,
Right.
like better treatment or privileges.
Oh.
In this particular case, the inmate's confession lacked specific details about the crime, which immediately raised red flags for investigators.
Thankfully, by this time, DNA evidence had been collected from the crime scene, offering a glimmer of hope for a breakthrough. Unfortunately, none of the initial suspects' DNA matched the sample.
The introduction of DNA evidence is a double-edged sword in cold cases. It can definitively exclude individuals, providing much-needed clarity.
Right.
However, the absence of a match doesn't necessarily mean that the person wasn't involved. Numerous factors can affect DNA recovery and analysis, particularly in cases that are decades old, like Eden's.
And this brings us to a pivotal moment in the investigation. So picture this. It's 2017, and a new detective, Detective Sullivan, takes on Eden's case. Can you imagine the challenge?
I can imagine.
Reopening a decades-old cold case. Sifting through mountains of files, piecing together faded memories and fragmented leads. It's a monumental task.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing, obscured by time and circumstance. But what's remarkable about Detective Sullivan's approach is that he's not simply retracing the steps of the original investigation.
Right.
He's looking at it with fresh eyes, searching for patterns, connections, and inconsistencies that might have been overlooked.
He's not afraid to challenge the assumptions made all those years ago.
Right.
He zeroes in on David, still considering him a viable suspect. And he also becomes very intrigued by that earlier drug trafficking theory that never really got the attention it deserved.
Exactly. This is where the power of new perspectives and advancements in forensic techniques comes into play. Detective Sullivan isn't just rehashing the past. He's using every tool at his disposal to uncover the truth. And then, the investigation takes a truly chilling turn.
Oh, this is where my heart skipped a beat when I first learned about it. Detective Sullivan uncovers a potential connection to a serial killer. A man named Chris, currently serving time in Florida.
Wow.
He's been linked to other murders that bear striking similarities to Eden's case. And get this, at the time of Eden's murder, Chris was living in St. Paul, Minnesota.
This discovery sends shivers down your spine, doesn't it? It raises so many questions about how many other unsolved cases might be linked to this man, how many other lives might have been tragically impacted, and it underscores a critical issue: the need for better communication and collaboration between law enforcement agencies across state lines. If investigators had known about Chris back in 1992, could things have been different?
Right.
It's a haunting thought.
It's a race against time now, because Chris is scheduled for parole in 2024. Detective Sullivan knows they need to gather enough evidence to conclusively link him to Eden's murder before he has a chance to walk free and potentially harm anyone else.
The urgency adds another layer of complexity to the case. It's not just about seeking justice for a past crime.
Right.
It's about potentially preventing future tragedies. It's about understanding the patterns of a potential serial offender and stopping him before he can strike again.
Detective Sullivan's determination is truly inspiring. He's clearly driven by a deep sense of responsibility to Eden and her memory, a commitment to bringing closure to her family. It's clear that these cases take an emotional toll, but he refuses to give up.
What strikes you about Detective Sullivan's approach to this case? What stands out to you as a listener?
His willingness to re-examine every detail, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is incredible.
Yeah.
It speaks to his meticulous nature, his dedication to leaving no stone unturned, and his focus on the drug trafficking angle, something that was dismissed earlier, shows his courage to challenge assumptions and explore all avenues.
Exactly. He's not bound by the limitations of the past. He's pushing forward, driven by a pursuit of justice for Eden. And this potential serial killer connection, that's terrifying. The similarities between Eden's case and Chris's other alleged victims are too disturbing to ignore.
It makes you wonder, how many other cold cases could be connected to him? How many other families are still searching for answers, still holding on to hope?
It's a haunting question that lingers long after you've finished listening to this story. It makes you realize that evil can often hide in plain sight, that someone capable of such horrific acts could be living a seemingly normal life while inflicting pain and suffering on others.
Detective Sullivan is urging anyone with even the smallest piece of information to come forward.
Right.
He believes someone out there knows something that could help solve this case once and for all.
Sometimes the smallest detail, the most insignificant memory, can be the missing piece that cracks a case wide open. It's a reminder that we can all play a role in the pursuit of justice, that our voices and our memories can make a difference.
They've even set up a dedicated tip line specifically for Eden's case. If anything at all comes to mind, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please don't hesitate to call. The number is 651-430-7850.
It's heartbreaking that Eden's case and the 1987 murder of Darcel Hopkins, another young black woman who worked as a sex worker, have gone cold for so long. These women deserve justice, and their families deserve answers.
Their stories remind us that behind the headlines and case files, behind the statistics and the cold, hard facts, are real people whose lives were tragically cut short.
It's a call to remember the victims, to acknowledge their humanity, and to continue the fight for justice in their names.
It's unsettling to think that someone like Chris could be living undetected in a community, potentially responsible for other crimes we don't even know about. This raises serious questions about how law enforcement agencies share information, especially when a potential serial killer crosses state lines. If they had known about Chris back in '92, could things have been different? It's a chilling thought.
It certainly highlights the need for more robust communication and data sharing between agencies. Imagine a national database specifically for unsolved homicides, allowing investigators to connect seemingly disparate cases and potentially identify patterns that point to a serial offender. This could be a game changer for cold cases.
You're right, a centralized system like that could make a huge difference, not just for solving past crimes, but potentially preventing future ones. It makes you wonder how many other cases out there might be linked, just waiting for someone to connect the dots.
Exactly, and it underscores the power of awareness. By keeping Eden's story in the public eye, by continuing to talk about it and share her case details, we might just trigger someone's memory. That seemingly insignificant detail they've been holding on to could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
So where do we go from here? What can we as individuals do to help ensure cases like Eden's don't remain forgotten?
It's simple, really. Just keep the conversation going. Share Eden's story with others, discuss it on social media, engage in online forums dedicated to true crime. The more people who know about Eden, the greater the chance that someone with crucial information will come forward.
Right.
And of course, if anything at all comes to mind, even if it seems insignificant, contact the Washington County Sheriff's Office. That number again is 651-430-7850.
You know, this deep dive has really highlighted the human side of these investigations. We've talked about the victims, the families left behind,
Right.
and the dedicated investigators like Detective Sullivan who refuse to let these cases fade away. It's a powerful reminder that behind the headlines and case files are real people whose lives were tragically cut short.
It's a reminder that justice, while sometimes delayed, is always worth pursuing. Eden Young and countless others like her deserve to have their stories heard, their lives remembered, and their killers brought to account.
Eden Young's case is both heartbreaking and a call to action. It underscores the importance of shining a light on these unsolved mysteries, of keeping the pressure on for answers. What can we as individuals do to help ensure that cases like hers don't slip into the shadows?
Awareness is key. We can share her story, engage in discussions online, and support organizations dedicated to cold case investigations. And if you're listening and anything at all comes to mind, even a seemingly insignificant detail, please contact the Washington County Sheriff's Office. That number again is 651-430-7850.
Sometimes, that one small piece of information can be the missing link that cracks a case wide open. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in the pursuit of justice. Eden Young's story is a stark reminder that even in seemingly peaceful communities, darkness can lurk, and justice can be elusive.
It's a case that challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question assumptions, and to recognize the inherent vulnerabilities that exist within our society. It also highlights the unwavering dedication of individuals like Detective Sullivan, who refuse to let these cases fade away, who continue to fight for answers, even when decades have passed.
Well said. This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive, and I'm sure you, like us, will be carrying Eden's story with you. If you found this case compelling and want to explore more thought-provoking stories, be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating investigations.
And as you move forward, consider this. What other cold cases in your own community might deserve a fresh look? Perhaps there's a story waiting to be uncovered, a voice waiting to be heard.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We'll be back soon with another captivating case that demands our attention.